The champagne flute was still in my hand when Arthur raised his glass to the room, his voice booming with pride. "I'm thrilled to announce our new regional director, my brilliant niece Lily Monroe." The applause erupted like thunder. My hands felt frozen in my lap. 8 weeks. That's how long Lily had been with the company. 8 weeks compared to my 3 years of sacrifice, 60-hour weeks, late nights, missed family dinners, every milestone postponed, in the name of proving myself. And now, I was supposed to clap along as though this wasn't the role I'd been promised. I forced my lips into what I hoped looked like a smile and pressed my palms together in a slow, deliberate clap. It sounded hollow like everything else in that moment. Arthur's eyes caught mine briefly. Was that guilt I saw, or just defiance? Either way, he looked away quickly, his arm draped around Lily's shoulder. "Amy has been such a wonderful mentor to Lily already." He continued, patronizing warmth in his voice. "I know she'll continue to support our new director in every way she can." Support. The word burned in my mouth like acid. 3 years of building this department from 12 employees to nearly 53 years of flawless results. 3 years of being promised no guarantee that this promotion was mine. And in the end, my father-in-law chose blood over merit. I sat there, my face an obedient mask while my insides collapsed. Lily stood up, radiant in her designer suit, hair perfectly styled, her NBA fresh from Daddy's wallet. "Thank you, Uncle Arthur. I'm so excited to learn from Amy's expertise." Learn from me? The arrogance of it scraped against every nerve. This wasn't learning. This was theft, plain and simple. When the meeting finally ended, I walked back to my office on unsteady legs. My nameplate still read Amy Hayes, Senior Operations Manager, but it felt like a cruel joke now. Margaret from accounting touched my shoulder gently as she passed, whispering, "I'm so sorry, honey." Pity? I didn't want pity. I wanted what I had earned. By 5 o'clock, my cheeks ached from holding a fake smile in place. Arthur appeared in my doorway, looking at me like a man placating a child. "Amy, could I have a word?" I gestured for him to sit. He leaned back, silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent light. "Look, Lily's going to need your experience to get up to speed. I'd like you to take on a senior advisory role, help her succeed. Train her to take my job." That's what he meant. I asked him directly. 3 months ago you told me this promotion was mine. What changed?" He shifted in his chair, fiddling with his ring. "Business needs evolve. Lily brings fresh perspective, new ideas. 8 weeks of perspective against my 3 years of proven results. You're taking this too personally," he said. I nearly laughed. Too personally? This was my life. This was my career. And now I was expected to sit quietly while they handed it away because of family. That night, Joseph, my husband, Arthur's son, made lasagna. He looked up as I sat down, my face still tight from holding everything in. I told him everything: the champagne toast, the false promises, the humiliation of training my replacement. His jaw clenched with every word. "Dad actually said you were secure here, so you didn't need the promotion." His voice carried an edge I'd rarely heard before. I grabbed his wrist before he could storm out to call Arthur. "This isn't your fight, it's mine." But the damage was done. The fracture wasn't just in my career anymore. It was in our family. The next morning, I plastered on another fake smile and began mentoring Lily. She came into my office bouncing with energy, her color-coded planner in hand. "Uncle Arthur says you know this department better than anyone." I started walking her through accounts I had built with my own sweat and sleepless nights, teaching her how to manage clients I had cultivated with years of care. She scribbled notes frantically, not even understanding the stakes. When she asked, "What if Mr. Morrison threatens to leave?" I told her the truth. If she messed this up, 47 people would lose their jobs. By lunch, my patience was threadbare. That's when I overheard Arthur's voice through the thin office walls telling Lily, "Amy's dependable, but she's not the future. You are. She's predictable, reliable. She'll do whatever we ask because she doesn't have any other choice. No other choice." That was the moment something inside me broke, not into pieces, but into something sharper, colder, more dangerous. The Amy who had absorbed every slight and every humiliation was gone. What replaced her was a woman who knew the power of quiet fury. That night I sat at my kitchen table, laptop glowing in the dark, and began to write. Dear Arthur, please accept this letter as my formal notice of resignation. I wrote and rewrote that letter a dozen times. The first draft was pure rage, words carved like knives. You betrayed me. You wasted my time. You humiliated me. But the more I wrote, the calmer I became. Rage was what Arthur expected. What he didn't expect was precision, the kind that cut deeper than shouting ever could. By midnight, the letter had taken shape. It was formal, professional, and every line dripped with restrained venom. For 3 years, I dedicated my skills and loyalty to this company. I was promised opportunities based on merit, not bloodlines. Yesterday, I watched those promises disintegrate with a champagne toast. I will not train my replacement. I will not be used to prop up a charade. This letter is my resignation, effective immediately. I signed my name, slid the letter into a crisp white envelope, and placed it carefully in my bag. For the first time in months, I felt in control. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than anyone else. The building was quiet, the hum of the HVAC system the only sound. I placed the envelope squarely in the center of Arthur's desk, then turned to leave. But something inside me whispered, make sure they understand what they lost. So I didn't go home. I stayed. At 9 sharp, Lily came bouncing into the office, latte in hand, eager for another day of mentorship. I looked her straight in the eye and said, Lily, you're on your own now. I resigned. Her smile faltered. What but Uncle Arthur? I didn't let her finish. Arthur knows. By now he's reading my letter. I walked past her, heels clicking on the tile, each step feeling like liberation. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed with Joseph's name. Amy, Dad's furious. He said you blindsided him. What the hell did you write? I told him calmly the truth. He underestimated me. By noon, word had spread through the entire company. Colleagues stopped by my office to hug me, to whisper, good for you. And finally someone stood up to him. But the best was still to come. At 3 p.m., Arthur called an emergency staff meeting. His face was red, jaw tight, holding my letter like it was a live grenade. As you all may have heard, Amy has chosen to leave the company, he announced. His voice wavered slightly. We wish her the best. I stood at the back of the room, arms folded, watching him choke on his own pride. He hadn't realized I would come to that meeting. But I wanted to see it. I wanted to see the exact moment the man who thought I had no choice realized he had lost control. As people filed out, Lily ran up to him, whispering frantically. I caught only fragments. Clients asking about Amy. Morrison threatening to pull out. My lips curved into the first genuine smile I'd had in weeks. Because I had one more surprise for Arthur. The night before, after finishing my letter, I had emailed 3 of our largest clients. People I had built trust with personally over years. My message was simple. I will no longer be with Monroe Enterprises, but I remain committed to your success. If you wish to continue working with me, I'll share details soon. By the time Arthur read my resignation, 2 of those clients had already responded. Wherever you go, we'll follow. That night, Joseph and I opened a bottle of cheap wine at the kitchen table. He looked at me with a mix of pride and disbelief. You really walked away. I didn't walk away, I corrected him softly. I walked toward something better, and I did. Within weeks, I had job offers, real ones, from companies that valued what I brought to the table. But the one that stood out was from a startup desperately in need of stability, vision, and someone who could actually build something from the ground up. They didn't care about bloodlines. They cared about results. I accepted, and within 6 months I was leading a team bigger than the one I had left behind. The irony: Monroe Enterprises began to crumble. Clients pulled out, employees grew restless, and Lily, sweet unprepared, Lily was drowning. One day Margaret from accounting called me, her voice almost gleeful. Arthur's asking about you every day. He says losing you was the worst mistake he ever made. I didn't reply, I didn't need to, because by then Arthur already knew. My resignation letter hadn't just wiped the smile off his face. It had rewritten the power dynamic forever. It's strange how quickly people forget the ones who carried them until the weight shifts and the cracks appear. A month after I left, Monroe Enterprises started to wobble. At first it was subtle delays in client reports, sloppy mistakes in budgets. Lily fumbling through presentations she didn't understand. But then, it snowballed. Mr. Morrison, one of our biggest accounts, called me personally. Amy? He said I can't work with her. She doesn't listen. She doesn't even know our history. What are you doing now? I told him I'd joined a small startup with potential but no stability. His answer was immediate. We'll move our account. We'd rather bet on you than on them. And just like that, the first domino fell. Arthur must have been livid. I imagined him pacing in his office, face red, muttering about loyalty. But loyalty had never been a one-way street. He had severed mine the moment he handed my future to someone else because she shared his last name. Meanwhile, I poured myself into the new company. It was raw, chaotic, nothing like the polished halls of Monroe Enterprises. But it was mine to shape. I stayed late. I trained people who believed in me, and for the first time in years, my hard work felt like it meant something. Still, there were nights when doubt crept in. I'd lie awake next to Joseph, wondering if I'd done the right thing. The security of a steady paycheck was gone, replaced by the terrifying thrill of risk. But then I'd remember Arthur's voice. She has no other choice. And I'd feel that fire again. I was proving him wrong every single day. The downfall of Monroe Enterprises became impossible to ignore. Clients followed one by one, many of them reaching out directly to me. Amy, you built this relationship, not them. We're with you. I didn't poach them. I didn't have to. They chose me because they trusted me. One evening, Margaret invited me for coffee. She looked both exhausted and exhilarated. You won't believe it, she whispered, leaning across the table. Arthur tried to call an emergency meeting yesterday. Only half the managers showed up. The rest were out interviewing. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A deep, cathartic laugh that came from somewhere in my chest that had been locked for too long. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance. Karma finally tipping the scales. But Arthur wasn't done with me. 2 weeks later, he showed up at my new office unannounced. His silver hair was messier than usual. His tailored suit wrinkled. He carried himself like a man fighting gravity. My receptionist knocked gently on my door. Amy, Arthur Monroe is here to see you. I felt my stomach tighten, but I nodded. Send him in. He entered like he owned the place, but his eyes betrayed him. They flickered nervously across the modern, bustling room. Young employees moved with purpose, laughter echoing in the corners. It was everything his office had once been. Amy, he said, forcing a smile. You look, well. I am well, I answered evenly. What brings you here? He sat down without asking, clasping his hands together. For the first time, Arthur Monroe looked small to me. I think we made a mistake, he began. Lily isn't ready. She's drowning. The board is losing faith. And our clients. He trailed off. Your clients, I corrected softly. His jaw tightened. Our clients trusted you. You've always had a gift. And perhaps I was short-sighted. Family can cloud judgment. For a moment I just stared at him. This was the man who had once told Lily that I had no other choice. Now he was sitting in my office asking me to save the empire that had discarded me. What do you want, Arthur? I asked finally. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I want you to come back. The silence between us stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady, powerful. And then I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. No. His eyes widened. No, I repeated. You thought I had no choices. But I do. I chose to leave. And now, I choose to stay gone. For a split second, I saw the truth land in his eyes. The realization that the power he thought he held over me was gone forever. He stood muttering something about reconsideration, about thinking it over. But I had already turned back to my work. He wasn't my boss anymore. He wasn't anything to me. When he left my team looked at me with admiration. One of them said quietly, "That must have felt good." It did. It felt like breathing again after years underwater. After Arthur's visit, word spread fast. Monroe Enterprises was bleeding and everyone could smell it. I didn't need to sabotage anything. They were unraveling from the inside. The clients who had left with me brought others, whispering about how Arthur's empire wasn't the fortress it used to be. The irony was sharp. His obsession with family loyalty had blinded him to the loyalty he already had. At my new company, things were different. There was no marble lobby or catered lunches, but there was freedom. People listened to me. My ideas mattered. Every success was ours, not just mine. When our first major campaign outperformed expectations, my team surprised me with cupcakes and candles. I laughed so hard, I cried. That night I walked home with frosting on my sleeve and a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in years. But Arthur wasn't finished trying. One Friday evening, just as the office was winding down, I got a call from Margaret again. Her voice trembled with urgency. "Amy, you need to know. Arthur's been blaming you in meetings. He tells the board you poached the clients, that you're sabotaging the company." I sat back in my chair, the city lights blinking through the window. Of course he would. It was easier to paint me as the villain than to face the truth that his downfall was his own doing. 2 weeks later, the headlines confirmed it. Monroe Enterprises loses key contracts, shares drop. My phone buzzed with messages, former colleagues, clients, even acquaintances I hadn't heard from in years. "Amy, you saw this coming, didn't you?" But the most surprising message came from Lily. A short, desperate email. "I can't do this. He set me up to fail. I never should have taken your job. Please, can we talk?" I stared at the words, conflicted. Part of me wanted to delete it to let her drown in the mess she had helped create. But another part remembered that she was young, manipulated, caught in Arthur's web, just as I had been. I didn't reply, not yet. Instead, I poured my energy into the startup. We were thriving. One morning I walked into the office to find balloons tied to my chair and a banner on the wall. "Congratulations, Amy, our new COO." I blinked back tears as my team cheered. COO. Not because of bloodlines, not because someone whispered I was the safe choice, but because I had earned it. The night after my promotion, Joseph took me to dinner. Candlelight flickered between us. He reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You did it, Amy. You proved him wrong." I smiled, but a shadow lingered. It's not just about proving him wrong. It's about proving myself right. A week later, fate delivered the final twist. I was invited to speak at an industry conference. My name was on the program, bold letters announcing me as a keynote speaker. As I stepped onto the stage, the bright lights making the room shimmer, I saw him, Arthur, sitting in the back row. His suit hung looser now, his eyes tired, but his presence was unmistakable. For a split second our gazes locked. I remembered the night he toasted Lily with champagne, the smugness in his voice, the way he dismissed me as though I were invisible. And now here he was, a silent witness as I stood at the podium, microphone in hand, the room waiting for my words. I began. 3 years ago I was told I had no other choice, that my value was in being reliable, predictable, safe. But I want to tell you this, there is always a choice. You can choose to stay silent, or you can choose to walk away. You can choose to let others define you, or you can define yourself. Applause thundered through the hall. I saw Arthur lower his head, his hands tightening into fists. The moment was not about revenge, it was about release. I no longer needed him to validate me. My success was its own proof. Afterward, people crowded around, shaking my hand, asking for advice. Arthur slipped out quietly, unnoticed by most. But I noticed. And for the first time I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. Because the truth was simple, he had tried to clip my wings. But in doing so, he had taught me how to fly farther than I ever imagined. The weeks after the conference felt surreal. Invitations poured in from panels, companies, even universities wanting me to speak about resilience and leadership. My calendar filled faster than I ever thought possible. But amidst the whirlwind I found moments of stillness. Moments where I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and reflect on the journey. I thought about the woman I was at that champagne toast, clapping while my heart shattered. I thought about the humiliation, the betrayal, the whispered words through office walls. She has no other choice. And I thought about the letter I wrote in the quiet of my kitchen, the letter that changed everything. Sometimes I wondered what Arthur thought when he read it. Did his hands tremble as he realized I wasn't the obedient employee he had shaped me into? Did his pride fracture when he saw that I wasn't just walking away? I was taking the very foundation of his empire with me. I would never know for certain. And maybe I didn't need to. Because in the end, his opinion of me no longer mattered. What mattered was the new team I had built. The clients who trusted me. the colleagues who respected me without blood ties or family favors. What mattered was Joseph's hand in mine every night, the quiet pride in his eyes when he looked at me. One evening Margaret called again. Her voice was hushed but tinged with disbelief. Arthur stepped down today. Officially. The board forced him out. Monroe Enterprises is appointing new leadership. For a long moment I didn't respond. The news sank in like a stone dropping into water, sending ripples through me. I felt no triumph, no gloating, just a strange deep exhale. The story was complete. That weekend Joseph and I drove past the Monroe Enterprises building. The polished glass facade gleamed in the sunlight, but the lobby looked quieter, emptier than I remembered. Joseph glanced at me. "Want to stop in?" I shook my head, smiling faintly. "No, that chapter's closed." Instead we kept driving. Past the familiar streets, past the old office that had once felt like the center of my universe, and into a future that was entirely my own. Months later, Lily reached out again. This time, I answered. We met in a small cafe tucked away on a quiet street. She looked older than her years, her eyes heavy with regret. "I should never have taken it," she admitted, stirring her coffee nervously. "I wasn't ready." "And you, Arthur, he set us both up." I listened, my anger softened by time. "You were young. You believed him. We both did in different ways." Tears welled in her eyes. "How did you do it? How did you move forward?" I took a slow breath. "By realizing that my worth was never his to decide. And neither is yours." She nodded, and in that moment I felt the last fragments of bitterness dissolve. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what happened. It was about freeing myself from the weight of it. Now when I stand before a room full of strangers telling my story, I speak not just of betrayal but of choices. Choices we all have, even when the world tries to convince us otherwise. I tell them about the night I wrote my resignation letter, about the trembling hand that became steady with every word. I tell them how one man's attempt to break me became the very thing that built me, and I tell them this. Sometimes the doors that slam hardest in your face are the ones that push you toward the life you were always meant to build. Looking back now, I don't regret the pain. I don't regret the years I spent under Arthur's shadow, because without them I might never have found my own light. So if you've ever been told you have no choice, if you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or betrayed, remember this. You do have a choice. You can walk away. You can rebuild. You can rise higher than they ever imagined. I did, and so can you.